We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.
And we're back on Liberty Nation Radio, heard coast to coast on the Radio America Network. Once again, we're joined by Liberty Nation, longtime host of this here radio show and senior political analyst Tim Donner. Earlier in the show, we were talking about the conducted palace coup that took place in the Democratic Party. And we just started broaching the subject there, Tim, hadn't we, of Kamala Harris's record. And I think it's notable that her very first campaign performance as let's call her what she's, the presumptive nominee here. The very first campaign performance, she talked a lot, and she talked a lot about her record as a prosecutor, her record in California, and all these things that she'd done before she became vice president. Notably absent from that was anything that has happened since she became vice president. Now, why would you think that is, Tim?
Well,
I know it's a fairly obvious answer, I guess.
But in fairness to Vice President Harris, most vice presidents get shunted aside, especially when they're picked for one purpose, which is the race and gender that was necessary for the look they needed for 2020. I think everybody just assumed, and rightfully so, that once she had fulfilled her purpose, she would be shunted aside or worse. And it was worse because what she was asked to be in charge of was a border that had just become completely porous because of the overturning of every Trump policy. So they said, let's pin it on her. Let's let her be responsible. Now, Mark, that's not the mark of a party or a president who is trying to elevate or lift up his vice president. You don't give her tasks that are impossible to achieve given your own policies. And then you slap the label of root causes, that she's going to examine the root causes, so that we were expected to believe that she would penetrate the highest levels of the governments of Central and South America and persuade them to whatever it is they're doing. Stop. Stop. That's the root cause. Okay, so it became a laugh line along with Kamala herself. And she's going to get a honeymoon. The left is doing all they can to toe the line between her claims of being a tough on crime prosecutor and being a progressive, radical warrior whose record in supporting, in fact, in championing the Green New Deal, in supporting radically higher taxes on corporations, the list go on. And eventually it's going to come down to her record. So in my piece on libertynation.com on Wednesday morning, what I laid out was a series of questions she's going to have to answer before anybody takes her seriously as a potential commander-in-chief. And the first question, Mark, is, when were you aware of President Biden's cognitive decline? What did you do about it? What did you say about it? Who did you talk to about it? Will you still claim that you saw no evidence of his deteriorating condition through all of your interactions with him, including your weekly lunches? Congressional Democrats, it's now come out in the Wall Street Journal, Axios, and other places, that congressional Democrats were startled by Joe Biden's cognitive condition as early as the fall of 2021. That's 3 years ago. Now, Ms. Harris, Ms. Vice President, if President Biden is not up to running for office, something, by the way, he denied for months before admitting that he wasn't, how exactly is he fit to continue as commander-in-chief? What's your response right now to Robert Hur's description of your president as an elderly man with a poor memory? Okay, that's just for starters, Mark. She's going to have to answer all of those questions once her little mini honeymoon here is over and the adulation and glory of the Democratic convention gives her a little bit of a bump in the polls. Then we get down to the nitty-gritty of answering those questions.
Yeah, there are questions that can be campaign killers, I think, because the wrong answer on that, you're either saying that you're willing to put the United States at risk because of your compassionate heart, and you are willing to lie to the American people because you're so empathetic about Joe Biden's plight, or you were trying to secure your own power base, which makes you essentially quite evil to continue to push a candidate who is suffering such obvious cognitive issues, and yet
I
you
mean,
want to stay in power so much.
Do you know how easy it is going to be for Republicans to run down the sound bites of Kamala Harris saying Joe Biden is vigorous and young and runs circles around us, sharp as a tack, all of this stuff. They'll just pull out one after another and run them back to back to back. But that's just a matter of this palace coup and the whole process of how Biden was forced onto the voters and then pulled back and then had her forced onto the voters, whether they like her or not. Here's another one she's going to have to answer in terms of policy, for starters, and it's obvious. As border czar in the Biden administration, though you tend to reject that title, how much responsibility, Madam Vice President, are you willing to accept for the catastrophe at the southern border, for the millions of illegal immigrants who poured over the border since the advent of your administration and the reversal of Trump immigration policies? Here's another good one. Do you agree that inflation was really 9% when you took office, as the president has repeatedly claimed, even though it was reported by the actual authoritative agency, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, as 1.4%? And exactly how much responsibility are you willing to accept for inflation that's worse than at any time in 40 years, and rising prices that are forcing Americans to change their lifestyles? How about it, Madam Vice President? Now, again, if she can pass the bar and handle the answers to those questions with some force and some credibility, then she has the opportunity to change her image. But if she answers the way she always has, with her signature word salads, with her cackles that are so embarrassing and cringeworthy, with her circular logic, she is going to reinforce that image. And I think it's possible, Mark, that in the end, she could experience a Michael Dukakis style decline. And what I mean is that in 1988, when Michael Dukakis left the Democratic Convention, he led by 17 points over George Bush, and he lost the election overwhelmingly. That's a lesson for Ms. Harris.
Very much so, very much so. I should call up on one thing that you said there, Tim, because you're in danger of being labeled a right-wing conspiracist for calling Ms. Harris the border czar, because according to Axios this week, this is just something that is only ever said in right-wing circles as an attempt to attack the vice president. Now,
if they didn't do that,
if I may, Tim, if I may, all you have to do is go into the search bar on Axios's website and type border czar to find out that apparently they were also right-wing conspiracists, because they called her the border czar on numerous occasions. So that's something she's going to try and avoid.
Everything that the progressive media has tried to depict about her over the years, which they've gotten away with because she was a vice president and Okay, she was a butt of jokes. She was fun to make fun of and stuff, but nobody really took her seriously, honestly. Nobody thought that when push came to shove that the Democrats would allow her to be the face of the Democratic Party. But here we are. It's a crisis of their own making that they're trying to put a good face on. They're trying to act like now we have the progressive woman of color, although they try not to use the term progressive. But that's what she is. She is the most radical candidate ever to run for president, bar none. In fact, it's not even close. You want to talk about a female Barack Obama. Barack Obama looks like a right winger compared to her. In fact, George McGovern, I remember in 1972 when he ran against Richard Nixon, who was seeking re-election, and McGovern dared to propose that the government give $1,000 a year to every person in the country to stimulate the economy. Well, that was such a scandal. And now you look at what Kamala Harris wants to do, which is to take that branch and grow it into a massive progressive tree.
It will have to be a money tree for that kind of thing to work, I think, Tim. We're going to be back with Tim after this short break. Don't go anywhere. We dismiss history at our peril.
Liberty Nation Radio with Mark Angelides.